Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following the latest gaming hardware. I'm Damon Hatfield. This week I'm joined by Max Scoville from Podcast Beyond, and from Podcast Unlocked is Ryan McCaffrey. Now, last week at San Diego Comic-Con, PlayStation revealed the release date for God of War Laufey. It's February 16th, 2027, and yes, that is just 1 week before Fable, a first-party Xbox game that is being released on PS5 the same day as Xbox. This is kind of an extraordinary scenario. We couldn't find another example of first-party PlayStation and Xbox games landing in the same week. Certainly not an example where the Xbox game is also landing on PlayStation. I think it's entirely possible that both of these games ended up where they are because of a certain GTA being released so early in 2027. It's easy to imagine they were both intended to be fall 2026 releases at some point. And if that's the case, Grand Theft Auto 6 has proven to be the great disruptor once again. It's caused every other game to scatter out of November and December, so we have an overly crowded September and now a February early next year. And it's caused a particularly interesting console war showdown, God of War Laufey versus Fable, two fantasy franchises both running for 2 decades. Now, Max, I can't help but think this God of War release date, just 1 week before Fable, is a bit of a middle finger to Xbox, because when Fable arrives, the PlayStation faithful will all be playing God of War. I don't know, what do you think?
I don't know if it's a middle finger. It made me think of that Don Draper bit where someone's like, "I feel bad for you." And he's like, "I don't think about you." Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's a win-win situation for Sony. Personally, I'm more interested in Fable.
Same.
Yeah, God of War looks cool and everything. Yeah. I don't have anything particularly against it, but the world of Fable just looks more, enticing to me at this point. I feel like the sense of humor is much more my jam as opposed to navigating a panopticon underworld, what have you. But yeah, it's an interesting spot. It really doesn't feel like this was plan A for anyone. I think you're absolutely right that this is pretty much people just, falling back and getting out of GTA's way. And the funny thing is, I think that there's going to be plenty of people who are still fully invested in GTA in February. We have no idea when online's going to launch, but whenever that happens, that's going to shove a bunch of stuff out of the way as well. So it's really a monolithic release. And in this case, yeah, I mean, I feel like Microsoft is kind of in a similar situation to Sony on the PC front. We saw Sony kind of venturing into putting first-party stuff on PC, and then they sort of abruptly pulled back from that. And I have the sneaking suspicion that Microsoft is very much going to be like, no, we're not going to put our games on PlayStation. Are you crazy? But Fable's kind of one of the last ones to be doing that, and it's kind of hard to pull back on that now. And it just happens to have fallen on kind of an awkward week.
Yeah, I agree with you, Max. I'm definitely going to play both of these games. I'm a little more excited for the openness and the freedom that I think Fable will provide, whereas God of War Laufey will be very scripted, hand-holdy, very cinematic. That's fine, but it just leans me a little bit more towards Fable. But Ryan, I want to get your thoughts both on this situation, these games arriving so close together, and I'd also love to hear what you think about what Max was saying about maybe we're going to be seeing fewer exclusives coming day one to PS5 after Fable.
Well, I definitely agree with Max that if Microsoft could magically unannounce, if they could do the Spider-Man, the Doctor Strange spell and make everybody forget that they announced Fable for PS5 on day one, I think they probably would do that given the change in leadership and the new strategy, because this is a relaunch, reboot of one of their 4 biggest franchises. I mean, Halo, Forza, Gears, Fable. Those have always been pillars. I mean, obviously Fable's been out of the game for quite some time. And the thing is, though, this one, it's checked every box so far. I mean, I'm a big Fable fan, and Playground Games seems to very, very clearly understand the assignment here. And Playground is, I think I've said this before on this show, and if I haven't, I've said it on Unlocked. I am of the opinion that Playground Games is the single most talented studio that Xbox owns. Their output is unassailable at this point so far, and that gives me such high hope for Fable. By the way, there's another silly little twist to this. They're not actually a week apart. They're actually a day apart, because if you buy the premium edition of Fable, it is out 1 day after God of War. It's February 18th for the premium edition of Fable. So they really are going head to head. And like you said at the top, Damon, in our planning meeting, we were going back. We couldn't find an example of a Sony, of a PlayStation first party exclusive and an Xbox first party exclusive, even though Fable's not actually an exclusive, going head to head like this. But yeah, I mean, it seems like it's one of those things where even when Microsoft wins, they lose. Like it seems to be part of the curse, the black cloud that hangs over them. Although, much of it's self-inflicted. Not in this case. They couldn't have known that Sony was going to set the release date for God of War when they did. But I think the solution here for Microsoft is, and I would want to see this anyway, regardless of God of War's release date. I hope Microsoft markets the heck out of this game, because they, at this point, as we sit here in July, they know how good or not Fable is. Like they've had all their internal play tests. Like they might not quite be to the mock review stage where they bring people in to give it a review that's obviously only seen internally, but they probably know what they have at this point. And if it lives up to Playground's reputation, I just hope that they put serious money behind this game to make it as widely known and big a deal as possible, because you guys both said you're more excited for this than for Fable than God of War. I'm with you, and it's nothing against God of War. Yeah. I've just played that game twice already. Granted, both times have been amazing, but Fable is well and truly something new. I mean, it's a revival of a game we haven't seen in 15 years, but it's new from the ground up from a wildly talented team, and everything I've seen from it so far, it just seems to scratch an itch that no other RPG really has in terms of the charm and the tone and the setting and all that. So
it is kind of a double-edged sword though, because for people who aren't as clued into this, I feel like you see a God of War game and a Fable game on the shelf, which had a big awesome release most recently. And
absolutely.
So it's no shade to, what is it, Fable, the Journey, the Connect game? Was that the last
no,
one?
you can shade it. It's fine. I reviewed that for IGN in my early IGN years, but that's exactly, Max, my point about I want to see Microsoft market this. They've got to get the word out on this thing.
Mm-hmm. Maybe they need to plan for like a second beat, like a month or two after release, when people are finished with God of War, right? Because people are going to be playing God of War on PlayStation.
That's true. And yeah, I mean, maybe there'll be some extra story content. Maybe they'll have DLC drops that come along that give them an opportunity. Of course, the other possibility, Damon, that you already mentioned is, or maybe Max did, I apologize, but if GTA Online ships in mid-February, both of these games are going to be up against the wall in terms of trying to get people to pay attention to them. So the story is not yet completely written on these two yet.
And what do you think about the future prospect of Xbox games coming to PlayStation after Fable?
Well, they've already said for 2027, it's going to be Clockwork Revolution will be the console exclusive game. And that does make sense because they've got this pipeline of games that are already in various stages of development. And if they've already put a bunch of development time into PS5 versions of some of these games, then it makes sense, probably to not throw all that away and go ahead and try and make that money on the PlayStation platform. But yeah, further out, like 2028, 28 is when we can start to maybe seriously think about the Elder Scrolls 6 being a real thing, whether it ends up being 2029, but that's going to be the ultimate test for Microsoft of their newfound exclusive resolve is, are you willing to withhold the Elder Scrolls 6 from PlayStation? And there's a case to be made either way. We're not privy to Microsoft's numbers. Like they probably would have a good idea of how much money they'd make on PlayStation versus how many hardware units, how many Xboxes they might sell if they just keep it exclusive. But yeah, it's I do think that the new regime seems to want to pivot away from the multi-platform strategy. And so, yeah, I do think that this could very well be the only Fable that ever finds its way onto a PlayStation platform.
And we're talking about God of War, Laufey, and Fable, but those aren't the only two big games coming in February. We've also got Tomb Raider, Legacy of Atlantis, with Truth Be Told is probably the game I'm most looking forward to in February. There's also Persona 4 Revival, and I believe Metro 2039 has just said February in 2027. So that's a really crowded month. Max, I also noticed that all of a sudden Sony is in this position where it hasn't been in for years. It has 3 big games coming out within 6 months. Marvel Tokon on August 6th, Wolverine on September 15th, and then Laufey on February 18th.
Yep, it's cool. It's weird. I forgot what this felt like. It's been quite a minute since Sony did have a lineup like this, and I really think it just comes down to the kind of ebb and flow of game development and how, you know, they came out swinging with a great launch lineup for the PS5, and here we are about 6 years later, and yeah, I mean, it takes about that long to make a AAA video game these days, and I'm sure, you know, some of these were probably in the works longer. Some were, you know, maybe had not that much time in development, but it's cool to see that. And that's also not everything that Sony could be dropping in the next 6 months. There's also Kenna Scars of Cosmora, which is TBD 2026. There is Horizon Hunter's Gathering, the sort of co-op version of that, which is completely just question marks in terms of when that's coming out. And then Until Dawn 2 is slated for 2027 at some point. We don't know when that's expected to launch, but that could very easily drop in the first quarter. So it's cool. I like when Sony makes video games. It's fun for me. It's more exciting to when they just cancel things and don't announce stuff. Yeah. You know?
They're making video games, and they're making a lot of God of War games. There's Laufey early next year. There's also the remake of the original trilogy that's still coming. They had the 2D pixel art game that was earlier this year. And then at Comic-Con, they also sort of soft announced another God of War game that will star Kratos. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. It's kind of a strange place to announce that. Do you think that they're doing some damage control because there is a little bit of some backlash a bit against Laufey? Not that I think that they're for necessarily good reasons.
Yeah. No, I think that's very much it. Is a pretty unceremonious announcement of a thing. It's not enough that there's 3 Kratos games on the way. You got to be like, there's another one too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that made me realize about this is I'm unclear if God of Laufey is going to be of the same scale as Ragnarok. I kind of hope it's a little bit leaner because that was such a massive game. But, you know, we haven't seen a God of War version of like the, you know, Uncharted: The Lost Legacy or Spider-Man Miles Morales. But based on the sort of the naming convention there, I could see it being like, this is sort of a side story. It is quite literally a side story to the first God of War. And I always assumed it was we'd get more Kratos games, but announcing this before this even has before this is even out there, it feels kind of. Brian Altano put it very succinctly on Beyond this week. He said that it's sort of like if you went up to the dudes who are sitting on the bench outside Sephora on their phones and you just said, "Hey, we can watch football after this." Like it's
that's great.
Yeah. So I mean, cool, more Kratos, but also, you know, come on, let's let's let this game come out.
Yeah. I think God of War Laufey looks very cool. I think it'll probably be very good. And Ryan, Xbox just released its latest game this week. Halo campaign evolved. It's being well received, and very notably, it's Halo on PlayStation.
We had a huge discussion about this on Unlocked this week. There's a good chance this is the one and only Halo that PlayStation will ever see. And yeah, this is a really well executed remake. We talked about a lot of different angles to this thing on Unlocked, but for me, it's really well done. I'm just not super excited about it, and the lack of multiplayer is a big part of that. And I genuinely feel bad for PlayStation gamers, not in the sense of like they did anything wrong, just in the sense of I want them to have the Halo multiplayer experience. Like that's such a big piece of Halo. So that's where I kind of landed with it, is what they did really well. It's just unfortunate there's no multiplayer. There is if you finish the campaign on Legendary, you get the Legendary ending, which is a little different than the regular ending. And so that seems to suggest that there is going to be a Halo 2 remake as well. And the entire panel on Unlocked this week was very, very clear. Go watch it. Go join us on Unlocked if you get a chance. We were explicitly clear that if there's no multiplayer in a Halo 2 remake, arguably the greatest multiplayer experience Xbox has ever seen was Halo 2, then I will personally lead the pitchfork and torch mob to the front door of Halo Studios. So it's you can kind of get away with it with Halo 1, especially when you're saying, well, it's for the 25th anniversary here, but there will be no such thing to worry about with a Halo 2 remake possibility, and we got to get the multiplayer going on in that one.
Well, to our viewers who are PlayStation fans that are playing Halo on PlayStation for the first time, we want to know, what do you think of Halo Campaign Evolved? Do you love it? Want Xbox to bring more Halos to PlayStation, or maybe you're disappointed it doesn't have multiplayer, or maybe you'll just stick with your resistances and your kill zones? Make sure you vote at IGN.com and on Spotify the day this episode goes live. Then we'll share the results with you next episode, just like we can our last poll. We were talking about physical games, in the all-digital future, which seems to be beginning in 2028. We asked what we miss most about physical games. And I thought this was a little amusing. The number one result was how they look on my shelf. That beat out everything else, from the ability to buy used games, sharing games with friends, or even their trade-in value. That was coming in at the bottom. So people not so concerned about selling their games. They will just like how they look on their shelf.
But that's because you look at it and you instantly get a great memory, right? Which you don't really get that in a digital format. So I totally get those votes.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. And that is our show this week. Thank you to both Max and Ryan. Thank you to everyone working behind the scenes to make this show possible. My name is Damon. We'll be back next week with more of the latest gaming hardware. We'll see you then. This episode of Next Gen Console Watch was produced by Damon Hadfield, Jobert Atienza, and Sam Claiborne. Damon is also the host, and Max Scoville and Ryan McCaffrey serve as regular panelists. Technical direction is by Jobert Atienza, with technical production by Marian Franzen and Amir Rakib. Audio engineering is handled by Amir Rakib. Post-production editing is by Jobert Atienza, and graphic design is by Justin Vachon. Next Gen Console Watch is an IGN production and part of the Geek Media Network.